Joining us now is Tom DeWitt. He is a local real estate developer. I think that'd be a fair description here. And we're going to talk about something we were just talking about it sort of leading up to the bottom of the hour break, but it's been an on and off discussion going back to March of this year when Lynchburg City Council had two decisions to make as far as approving building projects. They approved one on Wigington Road that may hold up to 750 different types of homes, but they denied one for Wards Ferry Road. They're more or less across from Heritage High School that would have had, I believe, 18 townhomes and one duplex. And you heard the audio that we played with Councilman Feraldi saying we could be sued over this. Well, as Mary said, he has turned out to be prescient because, Tom, you are suing Lynchburg City Council over this. So welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. And first off, so this got past the Planning Commission. I think it was a unanimous vote.
Yes,
City
sir.
Council turned it down. Why did you decide to sue over this denial?
Well, we just felt like it was one of the most unfair votes that we've ever seen on zoning type issues. And of course, the way it happened that night, how do you approve 750 units? And even a city agreed to put $3 million into improvements for a road for somebody, and then turn down somebody asking for the city to do nothing, agreeing to pay whatever improvements need to be made in terms of the port shop, medium directional kind of thing, and just doing 20 units, 20 total units on that property. So,
well, and I mean, do you think that in some fashion that you are owed an approval and entitled to it in some way? Is this not simply the purview of City Council? Whatever they might decide?
I don't think we ever viewed it as entitled, but this is something that we've been working on for about 3 years. We had gone to City Council before talking about doing apartments at that point because we didn't have the necessary acreage as per. Lynchburg is the only municipality I know of that has a 2-acre requirement for townhouses. We were just a little bit shy of that. And so anyway, we decided to go for apartments at that time, almost 2 years ago. And then at that meeting, it was all the council people voiced their opinion that they didn't want to see apartments or rental units. They wanted to see something that would be lived in, townhouse units. And so we thought we had their support that would come all the way through. So if there's any sense of entitlement, it's only on that issue that we thought we were doing exactly what City Council wanted us to do.
And now, what is the zoning for that parcel?
The zoning is business, and it's been marketed for business ever since since probably around 2008, 2009. So over 15 years, I've had it as a realtor. 2 or 3 other realtors have had it, and it never sold. So long story short, we bought it at auction thinking that, we could put townhouses in there as a down zoning, knowing that area pretty well. So I've seen 6 other projects on that road. Wards Ferry Road is probably the worst zoning, or the most, let's put it this way, there's probably been more rezonings on Wards Ferry Road than any other street in town, with maybe the exception of Timberlake Road. But 6 different ones have come to council. All of the other ones were zoning from a lower density to a higher density. We were the only one that was down zoning from business to townhouses. So from that standpoint, again, you think, okay, well, we're down zoning. I haven't seen a down zoning be disapproved in certainly not on Wards Ferry Road. And by the way, there's been no request for business zoning on Wards Ferry Road either. So
that's my next question. Mm-hmm. Is it not a good business zoning just because it doesn't have direct access to Timberlake?
Correct.
Is that the problem?
So it doesn't have direct access to Timberlake. It also doesn't have good visibility. The property that we're working with sort of sits down below the road. The properties in front of us that are on Timberlake sit up higher, and they have buildings on them which sort of block the view too. So, it would have to be an extremely secondary type of use that would want to use this property for business. And by the way, all the council members readily admit that the marketing that's been done for business has been done well, and still no user for it as a business zone. So they readily admit that it's not even the proper zoning for it. So
now, clear up something for me here as far as the traffic study. Was that something that was not initially required? Did then City Council come to you and have you do the traffic study? Tell me how that worked.
Yeah. So The city has a threshold of 500 vehicles per day. So if you have a project that has 500 or more vehicles per day, it requires a traffic study. Ours wasn't even close to that. Ours was less than 200 or about 200 vehicles per day, I believe. And so we weren't even 40% of the threshold. So when City Council started talking about doing traffic studies, one, we'd already shown that our use would have less traffic than a typical business use that would utilize that property. So in their comparisons, they've talked about our project versus no project. Well, obviously, that's not a fair comparison. But when you compare it to what could go there as a business use, our use is a much lesser what I want to say, anyway, there would be less traffic on the road by virtue of our use than if a business use was there.
Now, for something like that with the traffic in the morning and the evening, it can be difficult if someone's making a left-hand turn in a closing of Timberlake Road to back up traffic. We're all going to put a median in there. How would that have worked?
So what the city was requiring us to do, and it's almost like the council forgot about this, okay? So the Planning Commission said, we want you to do a right-in, right-out only, and they made that part of their approval. So going forward, once the city says, things like, okay, you're going to put in sidewalks. Well, you're putting in sidewalks if you do the project, right? If they say you're going to use public water, okay, you're going to use, well, so if they say you're going to do a right-in, right-out only, that's what you're going to do, or you're not going to get your project, you're not going to get to do your project. And so we agreed to do that, right in, right out only. And if you think about it, when you come up to there and you're going to go right out, you only have to see a little ways in the direction. There's a stoplight in the other direction and stuff. And what's interesting is I think people typically, like if you listen to some of the discussion, they talk about Wards Ferry Road and they would say it's curvy, it's only 2 lanes, it's whatever. But where we were at, number one, we were coming on to Copley Place. Copley Place is our tie-in, not Wards Ferry Road. But where Copley ties into Wards Ferry Road even, it's straight, it's already been widened. There is no issue with sight distance and stuff. And one of the things that when the council, two of them mentioned sight distance. Well, there is no problem with sight distance. We can see over 200 yards in to the left, and again, the traffic would be stopped or open at the stoplight, going towards the Timberlake direction. So nobody was. They had us agreeing to put in what they called a port chop, so a guy couldn't come out of Copley and turn left anyway. So.
And when you talked about the study for 500, it needs to be for 500.
500 vehicles per day.
So 500 vehicles, that was the Copley Road then is what you're talking about.
Because
there's certainly more on Wards Ferry than 500.
Yes, but we're talking about vehicles per day, whichever. In other words, we thought it was strange that they're making these requirements on Wards Ferry Road when we're coming on to Copley Place anyway, but that was the comparison, yes.
Now, the Vice Mayor, Kurt Deemer, and Councilman Marty Mischins also brought up safety concerns with heritage of the schools there and crosswalks that are used by the kids. What do you say to that concern?
There's no crosswalk there. There is no crosswalk. There's a crosswalk up at Timberlake Road. There's a crosswalk down at Adams Drive coming across to Heritage. But we don't have a crosswalk there. So we don't even know where they're coming from. And part of our suit mentions these things that, they're talking about sight distance. There's no problem with sight distance. They're talking about kids in crosswalks. There's no kids in crosswalk because there is no crosswalk. And I've been there and studied the thing myself a great number of times, doing, a whole traffic thing for 30 minutes to an hour. And there is no issue there. One of the fellows, Mr. Gupta, that brought up, talking about the traffic up towards Adams Drive and the school. Well, there's actually a dedicated lane to turn into Heritage High School over there. Obviously, the city expected the traffic to back up there, or they wouldn't have, school-only kind of thing on it. So, anyway, yeah.
Now, we're speaking with Tom DeWitt.
Is there any possibility of building there, say, with fewer units and maybe even less of an effect on traffic there? Would it be financially feasible to do it?
Don't say that it would be unfinancially feasible, to do a few less units, but it wouldn't, you'd only lessen traffic by, let's say, 10 vehicles per day for each unit you dropped or whatever. And there is a point where it doesn't make sense, to do. So, yes.
So you're suing the city, and I've read, stories about this with the other side saying that this is, for whatever reason council uses to make this decision, it is ultimately council's, they get to decide. For whatever reason they choose, the council members who are elected get to vote up or down on these kinds of projects, and that they don't think you have any legal standing. How do you respond to that?
Well, that's more or less. So we made quite a few accusations, if you want to call them that, in our suit, and they sort of dismiss all of them as we're city council and we can do whatever we want. Well, that's might be a proper opinion, but it's so magnified by the fact that the same night they go with 750 units on another project and agree to put up $3 million or more into that project to make it feasible, viable, or whatever, and then turn us down. I don't think you can just do that, just arbitrary. Let's call the legal term arbitrary and capricious. That's exactly what we think it is.
Well, Councilman Feraldi made the quip. What, did you not donate enough money?
Right.
I mean, do you think that's there's something to that, a suggestion that it has to do with political donations?
I let everybody else draw their own conclusion, but I would say one more thing in addition to that. The strongest opponent of our project was an adjoining owner who was also on the school board and a heavy donor to all of these folks that voted against us. Now, the school board guy, number one, that seems sort of funny in itself. But the other thing
and
about
you are talking about Dr.
I'm talking
Gupta,
about
who's
Gupta, yes.
Right, and he spoke against it. He lives in the area.
He did.
Okay.
Yeah, he not only spoke against it, but then he said, I'm representing myself. And there's a lawyer that gets up, Bevan Alexander, and says he's speaking for his wife and his daughter. So they let two people speak out of the same household. Another interesting thing about that is that his house, if you look at the city record, they have it as a duplex. So here's a guy with a duplex home, a apartment in the basement, and he's opposed to townhouses, okay? That's number one. Number two, his property was in a business name until I mentioned to Jeff Helgeson that his property was in a business name and it's a duplex. So how does he have the same rights as maybe everybody to oppose a project? It just doesn't sound right. And there's several things that have been a little bit weird about this whole thing. We had another guy down the street oppose us at City Council who lived in a townhouse, and he's opposing townhouses. That doesn't seem right. We had another guy that was a FedEx driver, or FedEx or UPS, I think it was UPS, but he came to the Planning Commission and spoke against it. I've never had that happen ever. You know what I mean? There's just some weird things that to me almost look like, did somebody call these people and say, hey, I need some opposition against this or something? I don't know. Some of it's just too weird to call out. You know what I mean?
Do you think that there is some kind of a conspiracy here? Is that what you were saying?
It's hard to say, but when council people say constituents, I got calls from my constituents. Look, there's signs up there. They're still up there, by the way, on the corner of Wards Ferry Road and Copley Place that have been up there now because of the way we've been rezoning or continually trying to move forward. Those signs have been up there for 2 or 3 years. Do you think somebody is now calling after those signs have been there all that time without any additional, public meetings or newspaper or whatever, that these people would still be calling? It doesn't make sense. And I think there may be some ties to some people here that, you can draw your own conclusions on some of that. Okay, if, hey, can you get so-and-so to call me so I can say I got a call from my constituents? Maybe that didn't happen, but maybe it did happen. I'm not saying it did or didn't, but some of it just seems very unwarranted based on my experience with rezonings and stuff.
Now, we're just about out of time, but one last thing here. What is it, a timeline for this case? When are you next in court? What can we expect?
So September 11th, 10 a.m., we have a meeting there with the judge. And and I don't know these legal terms very well, but I think they call it a demurrer, where you basically go in there and you present your case, they present their case. They would say what, Mary, you said, that we're city council and we can do whatever we want. Well, again, we've made these suppositions and accusations that say, hey, this is arbitrary and capricious. This is not normal. This is not what typically happens or should happen in a rezoning. And quite frankly, it looks personal. To me, that's why I'm suing, because I take it personal. And again, I've donated some money to some of these people. Not that wins me a vote with them, but you would just think that you would certainly get fairness, and that's all I'm looking for is fairness. So,
all right, we'll leave it there. Tom DeWitt, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.